Hello friends. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been patrolling the quiet streets of rural Oregon for 8 years now, and I figured I'd encountered every shade of family drama imaginable, from heated arguments over inheritance to late-night brawls fueled by too much whiskey. But nothing prepared me for that crisp autumn afternoon in early October when the radio crackled to life with a call from dispatch. A concerned neighbor had dialed 911 after hearing desperate cries coming from the old farmhouse on Cedar Ridge Road. My partner, Officer Maria Lopez, and I were finishing up a routine traffic stop when the order came through. I gulped down the last of my tepid soda, crumpled the can, and tossed it into the back of the cruiser as we sped toward the address. The property was a rundown single-story ranch house, its faded red siding chipped and weathered from years of Pacific Northwest rain. Tall evergreens loomed around the edges of the yard, their branches casting jagged shadows that danced in the fading light of the setting sun. A rusted swing set creaked in the wind near the side of the house, and the air carried the faint scent of damp earth and pine needles. The whole area felt isolated, like one of those forgotten corners where time slows down and secrets fester unnoticed. As we pulled up the gravel driveway, kicking up dust that hung in the air like fog, I spotted her immediately. She was pacing back and forth in front of the porch, dressed in an oversized flannel shirt that looked like it had been pulled from a man's closet, paired with faded jeans rolled up at the ankles. Her hair was a tangled mess of auburn strands, and she was barefoot, her toes curling into the cold dirt as if anchoring herself to the ground. What caught my eye right away was the way she clutched at her side, just below her ribs, with one hand pressed firmly against the fabric, like she was stemming an invisible wound. "He stabbed me," she whispered as we approached, her voice hoarse and trembling. Her eyes were wide, almost feverish, locking onto mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. Despite the mild evening air, Maria took the lead, speaking softly to try and calm her, while I kept watch on the house, its windows dark and curtained, no signs of life stirring inside. The woman appeared to be in her late 30s, with pale skin and faint lines around her eyes that spoke of exhaustion or worse. No blood, no tears in her clothes, nothing to suggest an actual injury. But she repeated those words like a mantra. "He stabbed me. Right here." We asked for her name, but she just stared past us, as if gazing into some distant memory, and murmured it again. "He stabbed me." Maria tried different angles. Who was inside? Did she need an ambulance? Was anyone hurt? But the woman swayed gently, her free hand twitching at her side like she was conducting an orchestra. Only she could hear, I radioed for additional units, while Maria stayed with her, and I edged toward the front door. It was cracked open just a sliver, the screen door hanging loosely on its hinges. Buzzing with a few late-season flies, I announced our presence, voice steady but loud. "Police! Anyone inside?" Silence greeted me, broken only by the distant call of a crow in the trees. Pushing the door open, I was hit by a musty odor, stale smoke mixed with the sour tang of spoiled milk. The interior was dimly lit, with peeling linoleum floors and walls covered in outdated floral wallpaper that peeled at the corners like old skin. A narrow corridor led to a living area cluttered with mismatched furniture, a sagging brown recliner draped in a threadbare blanket, and a side table littered with empty pill bottles. I glanced at the labels, prescribed to Evelyn Harper. The kitchen was a disaster, counters sticky with residue, a sink full of crusted plates, and a trash bin overflowing with fast food wrappers that attracted a swarm of gnats. No weapons in sight, no blood spatter, no struggle marks. The place felt abandoned, yet lived in, like a ghost town frozen in time. Stepping back outside, I found the woman had sunk to her knees in the driveway, hugging herself tightly and rocking slowly. She looked up at me with eyes brimming with unshed tears and said something new. "He's still waiting in there. He won't go away." But I just swept the rooms. No one. Backup rolled in shortly after. 3 more cruisers, including Lieutenant Tom Reynolds, a grizzled 25-year pro who knew every dirt road and family feud in this county like the back of his hand. When he laid eyes on the woman, his expression hardened, brows furrowing in a way that made him look 10 years older. He pulled me aside, glancing over his shoulder at her. "You get a name yet?" I mentioned the pills for Evelyn Harper, and he froze, his hand instinctively going to his holster. "That can't be right," he muttered, shaking his head. "Evelyn Harper was killed in this very house 5 years back. Her husband, Victor Harper, knifed her during a fight over money, stabbed her twice in the side. We chased leads for months, but he vanished into thin air that night." The woman was now sitting cross-legged on the gravel, humming a faint melody, something old and melancholic, like a lullaby twisted into a dirge. Tom suggested we get her to the ER for a psych eval, figuring she might be a squatter who'd heard the local legends and snapped under the weight of it. But that's when things escalated. As Maria and the others tried to escort her to the waiting ambulance, she erupted, thrashing, screaming that she couldn't leave, that he'd drag her back if she tried. "I've run before," she wailed, pointing at the house with a trembling finger. "But I always end up here. He won't let me go." The paramedics had no choice but to administer a sedative, and as they strapped her onto the gurney, she latched onto my arm with a grip like iron. For a split second, her gaze cleared, sharp and desperate. "Look in the attic, behind the old trunk, the fresh drywall. That's where he hid it." Then her eyes fluttered shut and she went slack. We all exchanged uneasy glances. 6 officers and the medics, standing in that dimming light, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Tom nodded grimly. We'd need a warrant to tear the place apart. We taped off the scene, and within 2 hours, a judge signed off on a full search. Maria and I geared up and headed inside first, flashlights cutting through the gathering dusk. The attic access was a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling, stiff from disuse. We pried it open, and a puff of dusty air rushed out, carrying the scent of mildew and insulation. Climbing up, we navigated the cramped space, beams overhead forcing us to crouch, boxes of faded holiday ornaments stacked haphazardly, and in the far corner, a battered metal trunk covered in cobwebs. Sure enough, behind it was a section of drywall that stood out. Smoother, whiter, clearly patched more recently than the rest. Maria called in the crime scene techs while I stared at that anomaly, a cold sweat breaking out despite the stuffy air. They arrived with tools and lights, working methodically into the night I stuck around, ignoring Tom's orders to clock out. Something about this pulled at me, refusing to let go. Around 2 a.m., their drills hit pay dirt, not Evelyn's body. We knew she'd been buried in the local cemetery after the autopsy, but a sealed plastic bag containing IDs, a driver's license, credit cards, and a birth certificate, all in the name of Sarah Klein. Running the details through the database, we discovered she'd gone missing from Idaho 7 years ago, around the time Victor Harper would have been dodging the law. The pieces clicked into place fast. Victor had murdered Evelyn, fled, and crossed paths with Sarah, maybe at a roadside diner where she waitressed. He'd lured her away, brought her here, and buried her identity in that wall. But there was more in the cache. Victor's own wallet, Faded men's shirts stained with what looked like old blood, and a handwritten note from 4 years back, in what handwriting experts later confirmed was Victor's scrawl. It read like a confession. I can't bear the ghosts anymore. What I did to her, to both of them. It's eating me alive, forgive me. The woman from the driveway? Hospital records and fingerprints confirmed she was Sarah Klein, very much alive, but shattered. She'd been Victor's prisoner for 7 years, forced to embody his dead wife, wearing Evelyn's clothes, responding to Evelyn's name, reciting stories from Evelyn's life that he drilled into her. The psych report painted a nightmare. Victor had isolated her in the attic initially, chaining her during the day while he worked odd jobs under aliases. Punishments for forgetting who she was supposed to be were brutal. Beatings, starvation, psychological torment. After 3 years, when Victor's own mind unraveled, he ended it all. We expanded the search and found his remains walled up in another attic section, a makeshift tomb of drywall and insulation. He'd slashed his wrists, bled out, and somehow sealed himself in before the end, perhaps in a delusional bid for penance. Sarah, left alone, couldn't escape the mental cage. She stayed in the house, trapped in a loop of trauma, convinced she was Evelyn, reliving the stabbing night after night. Her cries of, "He stabbed me," were echoes of Evelyn's final pleas, blended with her own fractured reality. What chills me to this day isn't the forensics or the decayed bones. It's those 4 years Sarah spent solitary in that farmhouse after Victor's death. No one to talk to, no way out, just endless days blurring into nights, her identity eroded to nothing. Neighbors recalled seeing Evelyn now and then, picking up packages from the porch at dawn, shuffling to the mailbox in the rain, assuming she was a hermit, grieving her husband's disappearance. No one knocked, no one pried. It took that neighbor's 911 call to crack the facade. Sarah's family in Idaho had long since given up hope, holding a vigil and scattering ashes from a symbolic urn. Their reunion was heartbreaking. She recoiled at first, calling them strangers, demanding to know where Victor was, if he'd forgiven her. Mistakes. Investigators uncovered the full scheme. After killing Evelyn in a rage over debts, Victor hit the road, met Sarah at a gas station cafe. He sweet-talked her into a romantic getaway, only to drug her and haul her back to Oregon. There, he forged papers, threatened her loved ones with anonymous letters if she reached out, and made her rehearse Evelyn's mannerisms from old home videos and diaries. The shrink said, Victor blurred the lines himself, treating Sarah as a resurrection of his wife, which drove him to suicide when the illusion cracked. We located his body exactly as Sarah's lucid whisper directed, entombed in that attic patch, preserved in the dry air, surrounded by empty bottles of the sedatives he dosed her with. 3 years later, I received an email from Sarah. She was in therapy in Montana, staying with a cousin, volunteering at a community garden to reclaim some normalcy. She thanked me for believing her ramblings, for tearing into that wall despite the insanity of it all. I still wake up sometimes thinking I'm her, she wrote. Still feel that phantom pain in my side, but I'm learning to be Sarah again. She closed with words that linger. I was buried alive for 7 years, then a ghost for 4 more. You pulled me from the grave. I still cruise by that farmhouse on patrols. It's been flipped. Fresh coat of sunny yellow paint, a new fence, flower beds blooming in spring. A couple with a dog lives there now, oblivious to the horrors embedded in its bones. Kids from the neighborhood ride bikes past it, laughing in the driveway where Sarah once knelt, her hand pressed to a wound that wasn't there. They don't know, and maybe that's mercy. But I remember her eyes, that desperate plea woven into delusion. He stabbed me. A truth twisted, yet raw and real. The alert buzzed through at 3:12 a.m. on a chilly Wednesday morning in November 2023, right as I was wrapping up my shift, cruising the warehouse district in downtown Seattle. I'd clocked 9 years with the force by then, sticking mostly to the graveyard hours for the extra pay bump and the solitude it offered. No traffic, no crowds, just the hum of the city winding down. My partner that shift was Officer Derek Ramirez, a fresh-faced newbie fresh out of the academy, barely 7 months in and still jumping at shadows. Dispatch's voice cut through the static. A silent alarm triggered at the Vanguard Plaza, this sleek 18-story high-rise tucked among the tech offices and shipping hubs near the waterfront. What pinged my radar immediately was the monitoring company's note. They'd rung the lobby security line 4 times, no pickup. The night watchman, a veteran named Marcus, was religious about answering on the second ring at most. We'd handled glitches there before, usually janitors bumping sensors, or the occasional raccoon sneaking in through a loading dock. But as we rolled up to the curb, the lobby glowed like a beacon against the inky Puget Sound backdrop, floor-to-ceiling glass panels reflecting the distant ferry lights. The security station inside was deserted, Marcus's windbreaker slung over the backrest, a thermos of what smelled like fresh herbal tea still warm on the counter. Ramirez and I shared a look, that instinctive prickle when routine turned sideways. The main entrance slid open without resistance, a clear violation of after-hours lockdown. We called out our arrival, voices bouncing off the polished granite tiles and echoing up the atrium like a cavern. The elevator bank displayed 2 cars frozen mid-building, one on the 5th floor, another on the 9th, and a third jammed on the 11th. Buttons did zilch. We were stair-bound. As we ascended, faint thuds filtered down, doors banging shut, footsteps pattering like rats in the walls, someone darting floor to floor. On the 5th, the corridor blazed under full fluorescence, every fixture humming. 4 suite doors gaped wide, files strewn like confetti across the carpet, insurance claims, treatment logs, financial spreadsheets. Ramirez radioed for reinforcements as I methodically cleared each space. In the second room, plated Dr. Elias Thornton, MD. It was pandemonium. Drawers gutted, contents vomited onto the floor. The desktop PC shattered, screen spiderwebbed. Gouges in the wood, where a crowbar or knife had forced locks. My heart rate spiked at a ripped binder marked DOJ Inquiry, restricted. Pages mangled and fed halfway into a shredder that word hot, recently stalled. The air hung heavy with the scent of toner and desperation. Ramirez located Marcus on the 9th, barricaded in a janitorial closet, wrists and ankles bound with cable ties, a rag stuffed in his mouth. He was shaking, sweat-soaked, eyes bulging like he'd seen the devil himself. Once freed, he sputtered about a pair bursting in around 2:45 a.m., hooded figures, one wielding a pistol, the other a satchel that clanked metallic. They navigated like pros, zero hesitation, beelining for targeted suites without glancing at the directory. Forced him to kill the CCTV feed at gunpoint, muttering about erasing the trail before the suits descend. The taller one, male with a clipped Midwest twang, handled the bag. The shorter, a woman's timbre edged with fury, had barked the orders. While Ramirez babysat Marcus until medics showed, I pressed on. The 11th floor reeked of acrid chemicals, vinegar-sharp solvent mixed with melting electronics. Traced it to an executive suite. A waste bin in the corner overflowed with warped circuit boards and flash drives, doused in what forensics later ID'd as hydrochloric acid, still fizzing and popping. This was Dr. Thornton's admin hub too. Cabinets ransacked bare, singe spots on the rug from a botched blaze attempt. On the blotter sat a charred ledger of client names, dozens highlighted in blue Sharpie. Beside it, a crumpled printout from a local news site, time-stamped 4 days prior. Dr. Elias Thornton discovered deceased in his lakeside condo, ruled self-inflicted overdose amid a probe into defrauding Medicaid via phantom consultations. The chronology crystallized when I unearthed a farewell letter in a concealed compartment under the desk blotter, penned the evening before his passing. Scrawled in trembling script, regrets over lost ethics, pleas for forgiveness. But the kicker? The closing. Apologize to Lydia and Garrett for pulling them under. Reinforcements flooded in, including Detective Sergeant Elena Vargas, a sharp-eyed lifer who'd cracked more white-collar webs than anyone in the precinct. She zeroed in on those names instantly. Lydia Thornton, the doc's niece, a billing specialist in his clinic. Garrett Voss, his associate, overseeing finances, both implicated in the DOJ's net as accomplices. The plaza's access records, overlooked by the intruders, logged Lydia's badge swipe at 2:39 a.m. She'd retained it post her uncle's demise, likely plotting this purge to torch incriminating docs before seizure. We were knee-deep in the sweep when word crackled in. A black SUV, nailed for reckless driving 4 miles out, barreling toward I-5. Driver fit Marcus's sketch, a mid-30s female with piercing hazel eyes that peaked when her hood shifted. Trunk yielded hoods crammed in the wheel well, a toolkit bag packed with encrypted drives, pilfered dossiers, and a tablet synced to the practice's accounting portal. Lydia Thornton gripped the wheel, palms raw and blistered from the acid splash, no gloves in her haste. She crumbled on the spot, whispering that her uncle was framed, that Garrett masterminded the scam, that this was about salvaging his legacy. Her accomplice, fiancé Ryan Hale, not Garrett as we'd speculated, spilled like a faucet en route to booking. His account darkened the canvas. Lydia had schemed for months since the suicide, poring over Elias's home files, unearthing mismatches. She swore fingered Garrett as the puppet master, forging submissions under Elias's login. Intent was dual office raid, Elias's and Garrett's on the 13th, to snatch proof and anonymously tip whistleblowers, framing Elias as dupe. But Garrett's suite yielded a bombshell, an audio file time-stamped 3 days pre-death, Garrett's voice silky smooth, leveraging dirt if Elias didn't solo the blame. I reviewed the tape later, chilling composure as Garrett detailed snapshots from a Denver symposium 6 years back. Elias entangled with a non-spousal companion, a device rep named Sophia, funneling bribes for overprescribing. Garrett hoarded them as leverage. Now, activation. Shoulder the fraud solo, or watch family. Practice. License. Implode Elias's reply. Shattered acquiescence. 3 days on, he was gone. Lydia, upon hearing it, snapped. Demolished Garrett's rig with a mallet from their kit. The metallic rattle Marcus noted. Attempted arson, but the overhead sprinklers kicked in, summoning us. What gnaws at me still, what invades my dreams, was the authentic farewell unearthed, taped beneath the phony one in that compartment. The genuine missive to kin, not the coerced facade Garrett likely dictated. In it, Elias confessed his lapses, how avarice blinded him, but pegged Garrett as the architect. He implored Lydia, no vengeance, trust the probe to unravel Garrett. Sealed for post-arrest eyes only, stashed in hopes investigators would unearth it. Lydia missed it entirely, torpedoing her future in a misguided crusade, morphing into the felon she sought to expose. Feds swooped at first light, commandeering the op. We'd gate-crashed a 3-year sting on the cusp of climax. They'd slated the raid for dawn. Garrett was wired, tailed, mere hours from cuffs. The destroyed trove, duplicated on agency clouds ages ago. That blackmail audio? One of many. Garrett's paranoia birthed a vault of self-incriminating tapes. Lydia's frenzy muddied waters, tainting chains of custody, shredding originals vital for trial. But the mindbender? Garrett alibied ironclad, scrubbing in for a marathon or shift at Harborview, corroborated by a surgical team, no break-in fingerprints. Yet his arrest that AM revealed shock, not at the breach, but its timing. He'd booked a one-way to Belize under an alias, bags packed. Lydia drew 8 years, B and E, evidence tampering, aggravated assault. The pistol, Ryan's licensed 9mm. Ryan copped 4 as accessory. Garrett? 30 to life for the fraud empire, coercion, and manslaughter via depraved heart. Prosecutors nailed his blackmail as suicide catalyst. Marcus bailed on security gigs, swore off solitary nights in hollow structures. Me? I loop past Vanguard Plaza on rounds. They've beefed protocols, dual patrols, biometric locks, flood cams, but those wee-hour glows from the glass facade stir memories of Lydia, rotting in a cell, vindicated, yet ruined. Truth loomed inevitable, mere sunrise away. Sans collateral. Policing's raw edge isn't gunfire or chases. It's witnessing self-sabotage in pursuit of justice, especially when the cause rings true. But the path wrecks all. I was 3 years deep into my role as a beat cop in a quiet Michigan suburb when the dispatch that still twists my gut came through. It was a chilly Thursday afternoon in late April, around 4:30 p.m., and I'd just wrapped up a routine noise complaint at a local diner off Elmwood Avenue. The call was for a missing juvenile, a high school girl who'd vanished after classes. In my line of work, up to that point, I'd dealt with a handful of these. Rebellious teens holing up at a buddy's place, skipping curfew without a heads up to mom and dad. My regular partner, Officer Harlan, was sidelined with a sprained ankle from a foot chase the day before. So I rolled solo to the residence, figuring it'd be a quick check-in and a stern talk about communication. The home was perched on the outskirts of Willow Lane, a modest ranch-style bungalow from the 70s, its gray vinyl exterior weathered by lake-effect snows, with a sagging chain-link fence enclosing a yard dotted with overgrown lilac bushes. As I eased the cruiser into the driveway, the place was lit up like a stadium, every window glowing against the overcast sky. And I spotted silhouettes shuffling inside, a hive of anxious activity. The mom, Karen, swung the door open before my knuckles hit the wood. Her eyes were red-rimmed, lipstick smudged from nervous biting, and she clutched a crumpled tissue like a lifeline. Behind her, the den buzzed with at least 5 others. The dad, an elderly pair I pegged as in-laws, a man who resembled Karen's brother, and a young girl hovering by the kitchen archway, fidgeting with her sleeves. Emily had been gone for roughly 2 hours by then. She typically biked home from Lakeside Secondary by 2:45 p.m., and Karen had begun phoning her circle by 3:30. The girl was 16, a sophomore, solid student per her mother's insistent chant, as if academic prowess could ward off disaster. I flipped open my notebook and ran through the essentials. Full name, Emily Rose Thompson. Stature, about 5 feet 4 inches. Build, slender at 115 pounds. Last seen in black leggings, a navy blue sweatshirt emblazoned with the school mascot, and scuffed gray running shoes. The father, Robert, leaned against the coat rack, fists balled in his pockets, his face a mask of barely contained fury. He hadn't uttered a peep, just glowered at the faded family portraits lining the hallway, as if glaring hard enough might summon his daughter back. That's when the vibe shifted from worried to weird. I probed gently. Any prior disappearances? Issues at home or with peers? Karen snapped a firm, "No, Emily's an angel. She shares everything with us." But I caught the grandfather, a wiry man with a salt and pepper beard, dart a sharp glance toward the young girl in the back. She, who turned out to be Emily's cousin, Mia, squirmed and mumbled incoherently. When I pressed her to repeat it, the room detonated. The uncle, Greg, suddenly confessed he'd spotted Emily slipping out her side window on 3 occasions over the last few weeks, always post-bedtime. Karen whirled on him like a storm, accusing him of fabricating tales, insisting she'd have heard the creak of the old frame in the dead of night. The grandmother, Edith, attempted mediation, her voice thin and quavering, but it dissolved in the uproar. Mia, barely 13, and wide-eyed with fear, chimed in from her spot, voice cracking. She revealed Emily had been off-kilter for a month, constantly glued to her phone, grinning at messages before snapping it shut at approaching footsteps. She'd begun experimenting with eyeliner and lip gloss at school, stuff their conservative folks would have vetoed, rinsing it off en route home. Mia confessed she'd confronted Emily 10 days prior, only to be shut down with a warning. Butt out, or she'd rat on Mia's secret candy stash hidden under her bed. The girl trembled recounting this, eyes flicking between adults like she anticipated a firing squad. Robert finally broke his silence, tone gravelly and edged. He demanded we scour her tablet, her online footprints, the works. We trooped to Emily's bedroom upstairs, a cozy space in soft mint green, posters of pop stars taped crookedly, a stuffed bear from childhood perched on the pillow, evoking a pang of vulnerability. But her tablet was AWOL, her backpack slumped on the desk, zipper half open with textbooks spilling out. Yet the iPad she used for assignments had vanished. Her smartphone, naturally, was with her, wherever that was. Karen's breathing hitched into panic mode, insisting abduction, that Emily wouldn't ghost without word. But Greg, still smarting from the liar jab, noted her prized denim jacket missing from the hooks, plus a compact polka dot weekend bag she toted for overnights. I summoned reinforcements and initiated the official report amid the escalating din. The atmosphere thickened with decades of suppressed grudges, Karen lambasting Greg for meddling in her child-rearing, Greg retorting she was oblivious to her own household. Edith whispered incantations over a string of prayer beads, knuckles white. Robert vanished to the basement, emerging with stacks of bank statements, poring over them for anomalous charges. Mia then dropped another bomb. She'd overheard Emily chatting with an unfamiliar voice via video call a fortnight ago. Someone older, masculine, promising life-changing opportunities. Emily had shushed her cousin, claiming it was a tutor for algebra. By 7 p.m., we'd activated a statewide alert and dispatched teams to scout hotspots: the Lakeside Promenade, community center, fast food joints, classmates' homes. But zilch, her closest pal, Zoe, appeared authentically distraught, swearing Emily seemed chipper during study hall, perhaps a tad preoccupied over geometry, but no red flags. The vice principal verified attendance through dismissal. Footage captured her exiting the rear doors at 2:20 p.m., heading to the bike rack solo. Cameras glimpsed her climbing into a silver hatchback, not Karen's SUV, not any family rig. Resolution too fuzzy for tags or the operator's face. Hysteria peaked. Karen crumpled into a chair, heaving sobs that racked her frame. Robert slammed his fist through the drywall, blood streaking his hand. The ensuing 4 days blurred into a nightmare marathon. I snatched catnaps in the squad car, guzzling coffee to stay sharp. We grilled every kid in her orbit, scrutinized highway cams radiating from town, deployed scent dogs along the river trails abutting the campus. State troopers joined on day 1. By day 3, federal agents commandeered the Thompsons' dining area as ops base. They dissected her digital trail and unearthed a horror. Exchanges with a profile dubbed Mentor_Max87 on Snapchat, spanning 3 months' bogus account. Avatar lifted from a stock model site in Texas. Chats began benign. Tips on acts, resume tweaks, internship hooks. But they morphed insidious, preying on a teen chafing under rules. Mentor dangled liberation, empathy, a shot at authenticity, sans scrutiny. On day 5, Sunday dawn at 5:45 a.m., my radio squawked. Emily at the ER. She'd staggered in solo, parched and fatigued, but no visible harm. Rushing over, I found her in a curtained bay, gaze vacant on the linoleum, diminished, like she'd compacted under invisible weight, yet matured brutally. Karen smoothed her hair. Robert barricaded the entrance, stance defiant. Emily clammed up initially, shaking off queries. Feds wheeled in a trauma expert versed in exploitation cases. Post a private 4-hour session, she unraveled. She'd holed up in Unit 112 at the Lakeshore Inn, 1 county west, awaiting Alex to ferry her to Chicago for a purported modeling audition with a top agency. Alex ghosted. Emily endured 4 days in that dingy space, mortified to reach out, subsisting on lobby vending crisps and sink water. She'd fronted $250 from part-time retail gigs, fibbing to the night manager about being 19 and meeting a sibling. The puppeteer had scripted her every move, evasion tactics, alibis, tracking dodges. They'd gaslit her. Folks stifled her spark. This was her breakout. Realization dawned on day 4. Alex was fiction. She hiked the 10 miles to medical aid under pre-dawn stars. Feds chased the Snapchat IP through labyrinthine reroutes and shells, but trails evaporated. Predator was savvy. Inn's exterior cams were dummies. Clerk vaguely recalled a nervous kid. Fallout eclipsed the ordeal. Thompsons imploded. Greg and Karen severed ties, mutual accusations of oversight blindness. Robert wired the house with surveillance, slapped locators on Emily's devices. Home morphed into lockdown. Emily transferred districts amid gossip storms, shadows dogging her steps. Therapy thrice weekly. Yet Karen confided, night terrors persist. Visions of that inn solitude. Phantom savior. Case lingers active, but reality bites. Groomers likely ensnaring another mark elsewhere, fresh alias. That's the gut punch. The rescue bittersweet. Monster untethered. We safeguarded one, but the web persists, unchecked. I'd been working the night shift in the quiet suburbs of Atlanta for 7 years when the radio call came in that still sends chills down my spine whenever I think about it. It was a humid Wednesday night in mid-June, just after midnight, and dispatch routed me to check on Mrs. Harriet Wilkins over on Pinecrest Road. She was 78, widowed for a decade, and lived by herself in this aging Victorian-style home with faded blue shutters and a sagging front veranda overgrown with ivy. I'd been to her place a couple of times before, once for a false alarm on her smoke detector, and another when she thought squirrels were nesting in her attic. But the dispatcher noted she sounded off this time, not her usual feisty self, but truly rattled. She kept repeating that something was pacing back and forth in her side yard, had been at it for nearly 2 hours, and she could hear faint whispering mixed with what sounded like muffled sobs. I figured it might be some local punks messing around, perhaps high schoolers on summer break, looking for a cheap thrill by spooking an elderly resident. As I pulled my cruiser up to the curb, the house was illuminated like a Christmas tree. Every lamp, chandelier, and even the basement lights glowing through the small ground-level windows that I'd never noticed before. Mrs. Wilkins was waiting at the screen door, bundled in a floral robe over her pajamas, her white hair frizzy and unkempt, as if she'd been running her hands through it in distress. She latched onto my sleeve the moment I climbed the steps, her grip surprisingly firm for her frail frame. She pointed frantically toward the left side of the house, whispering hoarsely, "It's still there, officer. It's still moving." I asked her to elaborate on what she'd witnessed, and she described a figure, a slender man in his late teens or early 20s, dressed in loose, tattered overalls that looked like old work clothes. He'd been walking in tight, repetitive loops around the ancient magnolia tree near her garden shed, hands clasped behind his back, head bowed, as if deep in thought Mrs. Wilkins said he'd pause every few circuits to gaze up at the house, then resume his path while emitting these low, murmuring sounds that carried on the warm night breeze like a distant conversation. I instructed her to bolt the door and stay put while I investigated the yard. Circling around the right flank first to avoid detection, I kept my flashlight low, navigating the overgrown azalea bushes that separated her property from the adjacent lot. The floodlight mounted on her garage blinked on as I rounded the corner, bathing the area in stark yellow glare. The lawn was patchy and weedy, knee-high in spots from neglect, and sure enough, there were distinct paths trampled into the turf, elliptical trails encircling the magnolia, fresh enough that the blades hadn't yet recovered. The footprints were narrow, shoeless, and oddly placed. The intruder had been heel-walking the whole time, digging in with pronounced arches that left elongated divots in the damp soil. I traced them with my beam and saw how they veered toward the side entrance repeatedly, approaching the door, retreating, then looping back as if testing boundaries. The door itself bore fresh gouges around the knob, deep, erratic scrapes that peeled away layers of chipped green paint to reveal splintered wood beneath. Some marks were low, near the threshold. Others stretched high, above eye level, as though the person had been leaping or stretching unnaturally. I tested the handle. It held firm but wobbled, suggesting forceful tugging had loosened the internals. Continuing my sweep, I checked the compost bin and the dilapidated playhouse her grandchildren used to visit. Its roof caved in from years of Georgia rains. That's when the sound hit me. A soft, rhythmic chanting drifting from beyond the rear hedge. It wasn't aggressive, more like a lullaby hummed out of tune, raising goosebumps despite the muggy air. I swung my light toward the source, illuminating only the dense thicket of pines that backed onto a ravine running through the neighborhood. The humming ceased abruptly as the beam pierced the foliage, leaving an oppressive hush. No owls, no rustling leaves, just dead quiet. I combed the perimeter and the tree line for another 15 minutes, but turned up nothing more. Returning to the front, I found Mrs. Wilkins peering out from behind her lace curtains, her face ashen in the porch light. I briefed her on the trespass signs and promised a formal report, recommending reinforced locks or perhaps a motion-activated camera system. She nodded absently, muttering, "He'll return, officer. He always does." Pressing for details, she revealed this had persisted for nearly a month, escalating from distant sightings to attempts at entry. She'd glimpsed his face once, silhouetted against her upstairs study window. Youthful, almost boyish, but with an eerie, vacant stare that didn't match his murmured words. She'd taken to napping in her recliner downstairs ever since. I handed her my direct line, urged immediate calls for any recurrence, and arranged for extra drive-bys on subsequent shifts. Over the following month, I made Pinecrest Road a staple of my route, often spotting her kitchen light pulsing on and off, a signal she'd devised for disturbances. Soon, other residents chimed in with similar gripes. Mrs. Lopez, 3 doors down, reported a shadowy figure rummaging through her recycling bins at 2 a.m., a lanky man in ragged coveralls who bolted when her porch sensor triggered, leaving scattered cans in his wake. The Hargrove couple next door awoke to smudged palm prints on their son's nursery window, despite it being on the upper level with no accessible ledge or climbing aid. The oddest account came from a delivery driver who'd spotted someone perched in the magnolia's crook at twilight, limbs dangling limply, head cocked as if listening to the house's interior sounds. By my arrival, the branch was empty, save for snapped twigs and those distinctive heel prints in the mulch below. Then, on a sweltering Friday dawn in late July, the tone shifted fatally. I was clocking in when dispatch flagged Mrs. Wilkins, her mailbox overflowing, garage door ajar overnight, no response to wellness checks. As the nearest responder, I sped over. The property loomed unnaturally still, that thick silence where even the morning birds held back. Calling out, I entered via the unlocked front, discovering her in the den's wingback chair, clad in the same robe, rigid and cold. Coroner's estimate: deceased at least 18 hours, likely a stroke. Yet the setup screamed foul play. All doors and windows yawned open, screens pushed aside, blinds rolled up and secured with twisted ribbons from her sewing kit. Those muddy tracks snaked from the garden through the mudroom, halting inches from her feet. The radio played softly on a static-filled station, and her collection of antique teacups, family heirlooms, had been meticulously arrayed in a spiral on the rug encircling her, each facing inward toward her form. The autopsy confirmed natural demise, attributing the disarray to opportunistic vandals post-mortem. But I wasn't convinced. The prints glistened fresh, soil crumbs still moist on the carpet. A passerby had noted her eyes wide open through the bay window the prior dusk, yet now they were gently shut, as if closed by caring hands. Someone had lingered, curating the scene like a macabre tableau. The estate hit the market swiftly. Her niece from Florida liquidated it cheap, citing bad memories from childhood visits. It sold to the Millers, a vibrant family from Tennessee, parents in their 30s, with a toddler and a preschooler, drawn by the charming fixer-upper vibe and spacious grounds. I introduced myself during a community watch round. They bubbled with plans for a swing set and vegetable patch. I bit my tongue on warnings. What proof did I have beyond hunches? It lasted a mere 10 days before the Millers' first distress call. Sarah Miller's voice trembled over the line, echoing Mrs. Wilkins's initial fear: controlled panic. Their 4-year-old Lily had babbled about a whisper man peering into her playroom at bedtime. Sarah dismissed it as imagination until inspecting the pane herself, finding greasy streaks still tacky. The room overlooked the ravine from the 2nd story. No balcony or foothold. My inspection revealed those heel-worn impressions in the ivy bed below, accompanied by claw-like gouges in the clapboard siding, spaced erratically as if the climber possessed disproportionate reach or contorted limbs. The pattern defied logic, defying standard human gait. Incidents snowballed. The Millers rigged trail cams, but footage glitched to snow during apparitions, capturing only timestamps of anomalies. Their 2-year-old Ethan developed sleepwalking episodes, wailing about the upside-down friend lurking in the shadows. Sarah discovered him one pre-dawn hour at the kitchen slider, glassy-eyed, gesturing animatedly to the empty yard, as if in dialogue, his palms soiled with fresh earth. Despite locked doors, he recalled nothing upon waking. The climax hit when Jack Miller dialed emergency midnight. He'd stirred for water and traced wet trails from the patio up the staircase, culminating at their master suite threshold. The door creaked ajar. He glimpsed a pale silhouette retreating. Flipping the lights, empty. But the damp path extended to the kids' quarters. Both slept soundly, yet Ethan's casement gaped. Drapes knotted in those signature bows from Mrs. Wilkins' era. That sealed it. I couldn't stand by off duty. I delved into archives, deed histories, incident logs, microfiche clippings. The puzzle assembled horrifically. Back in 1988, a 19-year-old named Daniel Voss had resided in a halfway house 2 miles east, treating profound mental health issues. He'd absconded during a storm, body recovered 5 days later in the ravine, succumbed to hypothermia. Files detailed his fixation on domestic bliss, often loitering near family homes, observing through glass, with a distinctive shuffle from a neurological condition causing inverted foot placement. The facility shuttered in 1991 amid escapes. Cross-checking recent vanishings, my stomach turned. 5 men from regional care centers over 4 years, all matching Voss's profile. Slight builds, erratic behaviors, documented window-watching compulsions. I presented the dossier to my lieutenant, arguing a copycat or emulator preying on vulnerable homes, perhaps ritualizing Voss's fate. We staked out the Millers for 4 nights. On the 4th, we nabbed him. He matched reports, mid-20s in soiled dungarees, traversing the lawn in that heel-dragging circuit. Upon approach, no flight, just a halt by the magnolia, head tilted, emitting a tuneless drone. Identified as Elias Thorne, he'd fled a rehab in Macon 3 months prior. He'd squatted in the pines, scavenging scraps, fixating on lighted windows. The Wilkins-Miller abode. Sang to him, he claimed during interrogation. Had witnessed Mrs. Wilkins's passing, arranged the cups as company, since she seemed lonely. Why families? Searching for his lost kin, convinced they were concealed within. Thorns recommitted. Facility fortified. The Millers relocated promptly. Pinecrest's Victorian stands vacant again. For sale sign weathered. Patrolling by, I scanned the yard instinctively for those telltale trails under the magnolia. The arrest of Harlan Whitaker is one of those memories that still creeps into my dreams. Not with ghosts or anything otherworldly, but with the raw terror of how narrowly I escaped becoming another statistic in a killer's long, hidden trail. I was 29 at the time, pulling the overnight patrols for the Harris County Sheriff's Office in Southeast Texas. It was late October 2018, the kind of evening where the humidity clung to everything like a second skin, and distant thunder rumbled from storms brewing over the Gulf of Mexico. I'd been with the department for 7 years, teamed up with Luna, my Belgian Malinois K9 partner, for the past 4. That dog was a marvel, sharp as a tack, with a nose that could detect lies in the air, or so it seemed. She sensed tension, narcotics, and malice in ways that saved lives more times than I could count. Our shifts were usually predictable. DUIs on the highways, kids racing trucks on back roads, the odd bar fight spilling into the streets. But that night, around 1:30 a.m., I was stationed near the crossroads of FM 1960 and Cypress Creek Parkway, a desolate stretch flanked by pine thickets and marshy fields that flooded every hurricane season. It was a hot spot for smugglers running goods up from Houston ports, so I kept my eyes peeled and Luna dozing in her compartment behind the reinforced grill. Then I spotted the battered Chevy sedan crawling along at 35 in a 50 zone. Under the limit at that hour? That's a red flag. Either impaired driving or someone dodging notice. The car bore Oklahoma plates, caked in mud but legible. I punched them into the system via radio. Dispatch reported clean. Owned by Harlan Whitaker. 65. No flags beyond a few ancient parking violations. Still, my gut twisted. Maybe it was the erratic sway in the lane, or how the taillights flickered like the wiring was shot. Luna stirred as I eased the cruiser behind him, her ears twitching forward, amber eyes fixed on the vehicle ahead. After half a mile, I flipped on the blues. The sedan decelerated smoothly, veering onto the soft shoulder where gravel crunched under tires, stirring up a cloud of dust that danced in my high beams. At first glance, it was by the book. Engine cut, dome light on, hands planted on the dash. I approached the driver's side, flashlight sweeping the interior, Luna observing keenly from her perch. The man matched his DMV shot. Craggy features, salt and pepper mustache neatly clipped, piercing blue eyes that avoided mine, staring into the void ahead. He wore a worn leather vest over a flannel shirt, hands calloused and oil-stained like a lifelong welder's. When I requested his documents, he complied methodically, voice low and gravelly, explaining he was en route to Galveston to see his brother, coming from Tulsa after a long haul, exhaustion setting in. Papers checked out, insurance valid, registration spotless. Yet the air hummed with unease, a prickling at my nape I couldn't shake. I told him to sit tight while I double-checked via the terminal. Opening the cruiser door, Luna exploded, hackles up, teeth flashing in a frenzy of barks that shook the windows. She'd handled meth labs, armed fugitives, even tracked a suspect through bayou swamps. But this was primal fury. She slammed against the barrier, paws scrabbling, growls ripping from her throat like thunder. The noise reverberated across the empty fields, cutting through the humid night. In my mirror, Whitaker's silhouette shifted subtly, glancing back, fingers tightening on the wheel until his knuckles blanched. That reaction sealed it. 17 years of combined instinct screaming alarm. I called for reinforcements, citing a K9 hit on a standard stop, then leashed Luna. She nearly yanked me forward, all 75 pounds of sinew zeroed on the sedan, straining like a coiled spring. I dug in my heels, gripping the lead double-handed to rein her in. Returning to the window, Whitaker's facade had cracked. Lips pressed thin, sweat beading on his brow despite the cool breeze, breaths coming in short rasps. I ordered him out, explaining the alert warranted a vehicle sweep. Tension hung thick. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. His gaze darted. Mirror, me, Luna's snarling maw. The dark road beyond his left hand inched toward the console. I rested mine on my holster, voice steady, hands visible now. He obeyed, but with deliberate slowness, each motion weighted. Stepping down, he was stockier than expected, about 5 feet 10, with a pronounced hitch in his right hip I hadn't clocked before. Luna's frenzy peaked, foam flecking her jaws. I had to secure her back in the cruiser. She was too wired for a controlled search. With Whitaker at the trunk, palms flat on the lid under my watch, I delved into the cab. It was meticulously tidy. No clutter, just a GPS screen dimmed to a route from Oklahoma to Texas, and a thermos of black coffee. But under the passenger seat, my hand grazed chilled steel, the contour of a pistol grip. Heart hammering, I extracted a Smith & Wesson .38 special, chambers full, plus spare rounds in a pouch. The serial was obliterated. Felony territory. Adrenaline surged. I drew my Glock, commanded him to kneel, hands laced behind his neck, and urged backup to expedite. Whitaker sagged, compliance laced with resignation, kneeling without protest, expression a mask of weary acceptance. Not panic, but a quiet unraveling. Keeping him covered, I noted anomalies. A CB radio tucked in the glove box, powered down but recently handled. A wallet with alternate IDs, all his likeness, varied aliases like Harold Winters, Henry Wilcox, from scattered states, forged with pro-finesse. This screamed seasoned evader. Support arrived in 8 agonizing minutes. 3 units screeching up, sirens wailing. We cuffed Whitaker, Mirandized him, and stowed him in a cage car. With him guarded, I resumed the probe under floodlights. In the trunk, concealed in a false panel, lay the damning find. A sheriff's star from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, circa 1980s, tarnished with what lab tests later confirmed as aged blood flecks. Tucked beside it, a laminated news clipping. Deputy Marcus Hale gunned down in routine stop, suspect at large. Dated 1982, 46 years prior. The grainy suspect sketch. Younger, beardless but identical jawline, those unblinking eyes that had evaded mine earlier. The narrative coalesced at the precinct over coffee and fluorescence. Harlan Whitaker was Harlan Whitaker, who'd executed Deputy Hale during a roadside pullover on a Dallas interstate in 1982. Hale had flagged him for erratic driving, unaware Whitaker had just heisted a pawn shop, wounding the clerk. Approaching the car, Whitaker fired 4 rounds into Hale's torso, snatched the badge as a macabre keepsake, and vanished into the ether. For 36 years, he'd ghosted under pseudonyms, drifting state to state, taking under-the-table gigs as a fabricator or ranch hand. He'd grown complacent, perhaps lulled by decades without heat. The case chilled in 2008. He was bound for the Mexican border via Galveston, rattled by podcasts on forensic genealogy, cracking cold files. What haunted me, observing his interrogation through the glass, was his banality. A grizzled everyman who'd blend at any truck stop or hardware store. No maniacal gleam, just faded regret. Yet he'd robbed Hale of 36 years, from his widow, who passed without answers, from his 3 daughters, fatherless milestones stacking like unopened letters. The lead investigator noted Whitaker's first query wasn't legal counsel, but about Luna, her breed, training, how she detected him. "Some dogs just know," came the reply. "They scent the rot inside." Whitaker dipped his head, murmuring she'd evoked Hale's own Malinois, witnessing from the patrol car as its partner fell. The proceedings were expedited. Ballistics matched the revolver to Hale's wounds. DNA tied him to the scene. Whitaker copped a plea for life without parole, dodging lethal injection, his intake coinciding with what would have been Hale's 70th Dallas PD, flew Luna and me for the hearing, bestowing her a heroism medal for thawing their frostiest case. In that packed courtroom, Hale's daughters, now mothers themselves, found catharsis. Veteran deputies, who'd chased leads into dead ends, wept openly. Luna sat poised beside me, but I sensed her awareness, tail thumping softly. Post-ceremony, Hale's eldest, a detective in Fort Worth, clasped my hand, then crouched to embrace Luna, whispering thanks into her fur. She revealed Hale's passion for K-9 programs, his advocacy cut short. It felt cosmic, justice looping through time via a vigilant K-9 on a muggy Texas byway. I still roam those routes with Luna, though she's eyeing retirement, silver threading her muzzle. Passing that pullover spot, she alerts, sniffing the breeze as if verifying peace. Her reaction that night was singular. Visceral detection sparing my life. Had I neared unarmed, Whitaker, cornered, desperate, might have claimed another badge. Therapy pushes positives. Closure served. A family mended. But 1:30 a.m. awakenings replay the what-ifs. All those stops. Whitaker survived undetected, officers oblivious to the predator in their headlights. I ponder Luna's gift, that animal wisdom piercing veils we miss. They archived Hale's shield post-mortem. Yet on that October Eve, his legacy avenged through a Belgian Malinois' keen sense and a seemingly mundane stop that proved fateful.